Armored Core What If? In today's What If, I'm going to try and answer the question of what if the pilot of White Glint was not Anatolia's mercenary, but instead Fiona Jarnefeld? This what if is not quite so strange as other what ifs. As many of you know, a translation error in Armored Core for Answer labeled the pilot of White Glint as female instead of male in their arena profile. This led to speculation that the pilot of White Glint was not in fact the player from Armored Core 4, but instead Fiona herself. What mistakes can do for lore. But for this video, I'm going to take that mistranslation and run with it. Granted, there is going to have to be some changes to Fiona to make it so, but we can break this what if down into two ideas. The first being the more lore-focused route, and the second being the more loose with lore route. So let's get the lore-focused one out the way first, since it's going to be the shortest. In lore, Fiona is never shown to have any skills in piloting a Next or an MT. Granted, this is not to say she did not during her time at Anatolia, but never in Armored Core 4 or For Answer is she shown to have any AMS capacity. So where does this lead? I'm going to be honest here. Not very far. It's more than likely that Anatolia will fold into working for a corporation, as they do not have anything to offer without a mercenary. Granted, perhaps an NT squad of mercenaries could be formed. However, in a world where Nex are what corporations are craving, it's more likely such an offer would not be looked upon as worth it. So who would take over Anatolia, and what would happen to Fiona? That is pretty hard to say, as Anatolia's location is never given. There are speculations of where it is, but based on game events in Armored Core 4, it's very possible the colony would have fallen into the hands of Omir Science, this being mostly due to their past in Next research. Although we know most of the key players in the research went to Aspina, the few that remain would still be useful to Omir, as anything or anyone they can use to give them a leg up would not be missed by the corporation with such a huge ambition. But again, this depends on Anatolia's location, as it could fall into the territory of another corporation, like GA, which, as we have seen in games, is not one to let resources go easily. Plus, with their state in Armored Core 4 as the corporation lacking behind in Next technology and links, even Anatolia's limited research could be useful. Plus, it gives them more people to throw into normals and more workers. Still, I am forgetting the most important person here, Fiona. Her life is sure to be very different if a corporation takes over. Of course, depending on if she shows any skills like her father in Next research, she is sure to be pressured into a research role. On the other hand, if the corporations thought her to be better suited as an operator, it's possible she would find herself becoming one for one of the few active links of the time. The list of who she could have been an operator for is quite big, as she could have worked in any of the corporations within the reach of Anatolia. Some links I think would be cool to see her as their operator would be Menaru, United Mons, a younger Rhodey who is learning to be a Lynx, or even Joshua O'Brien, the original pilot of White Glint. As you can imagine, this opens up a lot of different experiences Fiona may face. However, she would still fall into the life of being overworked by the corporations and very possibly be passed from Lynx to Lynx as a war begins. Because even without Anatolia's mercenary, war between the corporations was coming. No matter who pulled the trigger on GA Europe, war was the only outcome for the world, and Fiona? She would be very much a corporate slave, much like the rest of the population of Earth. Oh, and I also don't believe she and Joshua would go on to become the White Glint team of Armored Core for Answer. Joshua is very much loyal to his home, and I don't think even Fiona would be able to sway him from his dedication to the place he wants to protect. Right, that's the lore-based scenario of this what if. It is neat, but again it's very short due to Fiona being sadly sidelined as just another person. So now onto the more fun side, where I twist the lore a bit and put Fiona into the role of the Lynx of White Glint. As a young woman, Fiona helps her father with his research, taking the role of a test pilot. It's during this time the scientist and her father see Fiona's high AMS compatibility, as she is able to make any part move like it was part of her own body, and she shows little side effects from being plugged into the AMS for long periods. As the years went on, Fiona's father passes away, and the colony starts to struggle financially, leading to the top next scientist to start leaving. This, however, raises alarm bells for the now appointed leader of Anatolia's welfare, Emil Gustav. Who knows, people talk, and it won't be long before corporations start coming for Fiona. Seeing this as an opportunity for the colony, Emil at once talks to Fiona, explaining his plan to help the colony stay independent by using her skills as a mercenary. At first, Fiona is unsure. She is a gentle woman at heart and hates fighting. Emil, however, is not one to simply let her walk away. Instead, he manipulates Fiona, telling her that this is what her father would have wanted, how he would be so heartbroken if after all this time his home fell under the rule of a corporation, when he knew there was a chance to save it. It's like a dagger to the heart for the woman who only lost her father a few years ago. She knew how much her father cared for Anatolia and what he did to keep them independent. Perhaps she knew Emil was pulling her heartstrings with his words. Yet that feeling of letting down her deceased father washed over such logical thoughts. In this state, Fiona agrees to become Anatolia's mercenary, even if it's against her principles. Of course, Emil celebrates, showering her with praise about how she would be seen as the hope of Anatolia, and how she would make so many people happy. Fiona was not sure this was all true, but she loved her home, so what else was she to do? Such thoughts would have to be put aside, however, as quickly Emil would contact Global Armaments, knowing their need for links. The corporation wanted to see her skills first on a mission, and Emil was more than happy to let them send Anatolia's new female mercenary to do this. But they would need funding from GA to show her best performance. Emil's political mind already cutting the purses of GA, as the corporation agrees to sponsor Fiona, giving Emil a large sum of credits for the mission to be spent on what she needed. I am going to break the story flow a moment here, as in-game the player can be sponsored by a few corporations. However, the general belief is that Anatolia's mercenary will use the GA craft on offer to them, since GA is the one offering them their first mission. So I do ask that you take this little story bit as you will, for Fiona could have been given the same choices the player did in Armored Core 4 or handed a GA next, but the outcome would not vary too much, I feel. Back to the story though. Once again, a split could be formed here for our new Lynx, this depending on her skill as a Lynx, as I know I have made her sound like she is a hidden ace, but she does have little to no combat experience, so this is what I feel could lead to this split in the story. But for now, let's go with the idea she is this hidden ace first, and then I'll come back to the poorly skilled Fiona. With credits in hand, Emil is quick to set up Fiona with her next whatever it may be. She is soon loaded up and sent on her first mission. Emil reminds her that this is a test by GA to see if she would be worth hiring. That and word is sure to spread to other corporations if she does well. The pressure is heavy on Fiona's shoulders, and her first landing is not a smooth one either, as she lands hard, stunning herself for a moment before she moves off again into the terrorist-occupied city. Misses and even taking shots are some of the things that happen on this mission, yet the female Lynx pulls through, and GA admits they are impressed with her work, and will be in contact again. Happiness and relief is all Fiona can feel. Her first battle in the next was not so bad, and if this is all she would have to do occasionally to keep Anatolia's independence, it would be worth it. Sadly, however, more and more calls came to the female mercenary, and Emil was more than happy to keep sending her out into more and more dangerous jobs. In the end, Fiona becomes a Lynx constantly under pressure from Emil. For Emil, a man of politics and the leader of Anatolia, he is not a kind operator who cares for their pilot and what they do. Instead, he is sure to keep reminding her why she is doing this and what it means to fail, even looking past how dangerous a job may be, as his skilled female lynx is forced to fight the 4 elite Raelianard lynx alone. Just like Anatolia's mercenary, he will say the same thing to Fiona on that mission.
Continue the mission. The enemy's worn down too. You can do this. Good luck.
Winning here, however, changes Fiona. She is no longer kind or naive. The young woman has grown into an unwilling warrior. She becomes colder to all things in life, more level-headed in battle, and death is no longer something that scares her. It's just something she expects in such a life. This all being said, this is not a suggestion she becomes this cold-hearted killing machine. She is still human, and it's very possible PTSD is something Fiona would be suffering from at this time. Her lifestyle changing as she sleeps more from the heavy next usage, yet fighting is all she can think about when awake, as she spends hours training. Communication becomes hard work for her, as she talks less and less to people like Emil, or anyone in Anatolia. Still, even with this change from the young woman he once knew, Emil keeps pushing her, and in the end, Fiona is the one to crumble Raelianard to dust, and the one unable to save her home from Joshua. Fiona watches her home burn after Celio is dealt with. With a heavy heart, she leaves her home and wanders for a few years as a lynx without a home or a next. Again, to interrupt and be that guy, it's also possible Fiona dies here too, as in game, Fiona and the mercenary were away from Anatolia when the attack happened. So if she was sleeping or even training at Anatolia, it's more than likely she could have been killed by Joshua's first attack. Finally, as time rolls on and her need to settle grows stronger, Fiona joins Lynark first as a citizen, but is once again convinced to take up arms by the leaders of Lynark. Only this time as White Glint. Once again, she follows in the footsteps of the game, only this time when Strayed and Ostava come to take out White Glint, Fiona says this.
This is the Lynx of White Glint. You are trespassing in Lynark territory. Pull back immediately, or I will respond with lethal force.
And what Ostava says hits more close to home.
Huh. So it's Fiona Jarnefelt. What right have you to speak, you who brought down Anatolia?
History has painted her as the bad one. In fact, the correct way to say this is the corporations have painted this picture. The picture that it was Fiona who destroyed her home. By her choices or doing it herself, she is seen as the villain. Sadly, this does not change the fate of White Glint, as it still sinks into the ocean, and Fiona now becomes the pilot that needs a new next, not the spokesperson from Lynark aiding their cause. Yet, while I have now painted this grand tale of Fiona being this super pilot who one day becomes the legendary lynx just waiting for a new next, the second outcome, which I'm sure you all see coming, is that Fiona is killed sometime during the story of Armored Core 4. Now, while it's hard to pinpoint when this could happen, as she could die to the Desert Wolf, be it by his hand or by Joshua coming to help, or she could live long enough to die to a skilled pilot like Shering. No matter where she perishes, however, one thing is for sure, Anatolia would have to go to a corporation to live on. So, this is how I see this what if happening. But what about you? If you have your own thoughts on how this would all go down, put them in the comments. Or if you make your own what if video on the subject, let me know too. With that said, this Armored Core what if comes to a close.